This is the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast with Cass Midgley and Marie D'Elephant.
We interview people you don't know about a subject no one wants to talk about. We hope to encourage people in the process of deconstructing their faith and help curb the loneliness that accompanies it. We think the world is a better place when more people live by sight, not by faith. Please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, you can support us monetarily in 2 easy ways. You can pledge
$1 million
or more through Patreon. That's patreon.com/EA podcast, or leave a lump sum donation through PayPal at our website, everyone'sagnostic.com. The smallest contribution is greatly appreciated.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 230 of the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast. I'm Cass Midgley. I'm going to die. A big thanks to each and every one of our Patreon and PayPal supporters. Our guest today is Emily. She is a former evangelical Christian who struggled with a lot of doubts and crises of faith on her road to freedom and unbelief. Emily sometimes considers herself a former fundie, or a shameless heathen, although atheist is the title she uses most. She is in her early 30s, works in healthcare, and is currently going back to school to further her career. In the very small amount of free time she currently has, she likes to write fiction, daydream, and wander aimlessly through Target with an empty cart. She doesn't have a spouse or kids, but she does have a pet bunny that she spoils beyond all good sense. Emily tends toward being a hermit, but thankfully has great friends who occasionally persuade her to leave the house and do things like this podcast. There's no rest for the weary. What does it take to be a self-respecting person, comfortable with themselves and at ease around others, feeling no pressure to perform? Our guest today, Emily, tells a story of being a self-doubting young girl, insecure and afraid of being seen. But you wouldn't know it by her presentation today. And by presentation, I mean she presents herself, not without trepidation, of course, but here, nonetheless. Christianity promises to love you just as you are, but it doesn't turn out to be so true, at least not in many of the Christianities. One of the Jesuses in the Bible offers rest to the weary, tired of trying to fit in or keep up with the Joneses. But I personally didn't attain true self-respect until I got out from under the spell of the Christianity I adopted. And that's true for Emily too, and Marie, my co-host. It's my experience that insecure people can find themselves in a vortex, a gerbil wheel, a treadmill, trying to go somewhere, anywhere but who they really are, which only makes things worse because it's exhausting. What we need is rest, not the rest the Bible promised, but a personally achieved rest. The gerbil wheel is not a way of getting out of the cage. The treadmill doesn't take anyone from point A to point B. I'm calling this cycle the in cycle because it's caused by insecurity, inferiority, and N for no saying. Let's say I'm not at rest with who I am. I'm insecure about my body, my intellect, my sense of humor, my education or lack thereof, my knowledge of things like pop culture or world cultures, or being able to find Istanbul on a map. Or I'm insecure about having never read East of Eden or Wuthering Heights. So these are things I run after on the treadmill in the in cycle. I work really hard, especially in social circles in which I wish to be accepted and included, to appear smart, interesting, clever, quick-witted, informed, and hip. Someone of whom people will say while driving home from the party, "Wow, Cass is really sharp. We're so lucky to be his friend." And it wouldn't be just because I was kind. Anyone can fake kindness, and most people actually are kind. But I want to be impressive. People in the in cycle are never at rest, especially when they're around others. They feel the pressure to perform. They need to be liked. It may be the one thing they lack, because even the rich are in the in cycle, maybe even more than the rest of us. Even the beautiful can feel insecure and inferior, even to people not near their beauty. In fact, gifted people in the in cycle often come to resent their asset, whether it's wealth or beauty or they've won a Grammy, because their self-doubt is so overbearing that even when someone compliments them, they're suspicious that they don't mean it and feel even patronized by it. No matter how much they have, they're always aware of what they don't have. Being rich does nothing to compensate for their lack of understanding about, say, Coltrane's jazz, or the Bosnian genocide of 1995, or their unseemly hairline. For some, it seems that memorizing all the data in Wikipedia wouldn't pull them out of their pout. Nothing can save an insecure, self-conscious person with an inferiority complex. Except yes saying. Yes is the only way out of the in cycle. Say it with me, I'm enough. Just as I am, I'm enough. That's where life begins. When you can rest and get off the treadmill and out of the in cycle. Here's what's so beautiful about this about face. When you realize and accept that you know some things and you don't know some things, that you are beautiful in your own right, and the days of elevating yourself over lesser people, as if there was such a thing, and or demeaning yourself under greater people, as if there was such a thing, those days are over. You realize you're just on the spectrum regarding every human trait. Athletic, humor, artistic, cultured, green thumb, sense of fashion, neat housekeeper, clay pottery enthusiast. We're all somewhere on the spectrum of all things human. There's always people to your left and right, better and worse, lesser and greater, and there you are somewhere in the middle. That's where you find yourself, and that's where you say yes. Most things about us are out of our control. They just are. I just am. And say it with me again, I'm enough. Shit, I sound like a Tony Robbins conference. Anyway, the beauty of the about face is this. It seems we humans have trouble respecting others when we don't respect ourselves, celebrating others' successes when we can't celebrate our own, and or we have trouble loving others when we can't love ourselves. Now here's the flip side of that. When a person who loves being human meets a person who's in denial of their humanness, a no-sayer, they pick up on it, they spot it, they get it. They have so much compassion for that person because, to some extent, everyone's been there. We've all done that to ourselves. And this is who we need in our lives, people who've embraced what is. It's what the world needs. Because when you respect yourself, like yourself, love yourself, then you can occasionally get back on the treadmill or gerbil wheel, not because you want to get away from yourself and circumstances, but because you respect yourself and want the exercise, the expansion of what already is. You love what is so much that you want more of it. And that's a big difference between kicking and scratching to achieve that which cannot be achieved, a fantasy version of yourself so that people will like you, and this, re-entering the world of learning to build on what's already enough. Let me say that again. Re-enter the world of learning to build on what's already there, what's already enough. Hell, you can slowly, casually, with ease, go look up Bosnia, listen to Coltrane, read East of Eden, skip Wuthering Heights, and find Istanbul on a map. Not because you need to, but because you want to. as an example of people who have expanded themselves, not because they want to be loved, but because they already love themselves. I want to give a shout out to Joel De Los Santos and James Exline, both of which are former guests on this podcast. And if you don't already have them on friends on Facebook, then you may not know what I'm talking about, but both of them have literally turned their bodies around. I don't know the details of how many hundreds of pounds they've lost, but I'm encouraged by this because it's one way that my deconversion hasn't manifested yet. I've actually cared less about my body after deconversion, and I'm inspired by these guys and gals, whoever out there has said, you know what, after faith, I loved my body more, I loved myself more, and I cared more. And physically, this is a place where I have some room to grow because I'm gaining weight, and I don't know. I'm inspired, and I want to shout out to these guys and say, well done. You guys are amazing and inspiring. Joel De Los Santos and James Exline. Bravo, guys. We taped this conversation on December 8th, 2018. The intro and segue music is by Dave Weckl called Just Groove Me. The segue music on this episode is from Set Your Monster Free by Quiet Company. Thanks for listening, and be a yes-sayer to what is.
Happy January, beautiful people. We're about to dive into some really nuanced and profound topics, but you already knew that because you're super smart and you love this show. But to get you started, let's talk about something light. The weather. I love talking about the weather and announcing what day of the week it is. Like, it's Monday. Here in Minnesota, it's 9 degrees Fahrenheit, which is negative 12 Celsius. Okay, did I break enough ice? Okay, so you're about to listen to an interview with my dear friend, Emily. I met her through a former fundamentalist meetup group here in Minneapolis. She is such a badass lady, and I am so grateful that she is one of my closest friends. However, before we get to that, I just want to briefly share that on January 9th, we hired a company to perform a euthanasia in our home on our 7-year-old cat, Papoy. She began being ill late November, early December 2018, and we spent the following 5 to 6 weeks spending thousands of dollars on diagnosing her, hours a day on feeding her through a tube, and so much time on crying. As of the time of this recording, it's been 9 days since she died. I'm devastated, and I'm learning what grief is. I recently heard through a listener, Joe, that Seth Andrews' dog, Henry, died as well this week, and that Seth released a short episode to talk about Henry and his legacy. Using his platform, he made a goal to raise $15,000 for the Tulsa Humane Society to buy new rescue vans. As of right now, he's raised $26,000. That's how much difference a pet can make. Henry was loved by people all over the world, and as a result of his untimely death, Seth did not say no to what is. He used his grief to be able to empower the Tulsa Humane Society to be able to save thousands more dogs like Henry. Before Seth's dog died, I'd already been thinking I wanted to use the podcast to talk about what my husband and I learned through our experiences with illness, caretaking, dying, and grieving, with a focus on what these experiences may be like for an ex-Christian or a never-believer. And Seth's recent episode encouraged me even more. I was afraid that people would say, it's just a pet. Seth expressed the same thing on his show, but it seems like everyone gets it. Losing my cat helped me see how valuable and amazing of a being she was. In turn, that helped me see that non-human animals are also unique, autonomous, loving beings with similar enough life energy as us. While I've wanted to be a vegetarian for years, I've never pursued it seriously because it would take a lot of effort. Plus, I do have a history of an eating disorder which thrives whenever I intentionally modify my diet. So with Papoy's passing, though, I have had 2 revelations. 1, that animals should not be degraded as they are now by humans, treated as if they have no feelings, desires, individuality, as if they are here to serve us. 2, watching Papoy's body crumble under the weight of cancer, I realized how fragile my body is, and that how I treat it immediately matters. And these revelations have emboldened me to make 2019 a year to focus on my bodily health, eat less junk food, eat less meat. I think that by giving no regard to the kind of food I put into my body, I was denying, to an extent, my mortality, saying no to the fact that I'm made up of fragile tissues and organs that thrive in the right conditions. My life is only getting richer and better, and I want to live as long as I can and as healthy as I can. And Papoy has inspired me to do this in a roundabout way. Additionally, as I reflected on Papoy's life, I realized that she put so much good into the world. She loved, she nurtured. That was literally her life. But we disregard animals like that. We just say that's just what animals do. We take it for granted. For lack of a better word, we dehumanize their very human qualities. Qualities that aren't actually exclusive to humans, but common to so many species. And yet, many animals are better than many humans out there. And so then it hit me. I am good. My life is a life of creating good. What is good? Well, here I'll describe it as empowering and giving space to others to pursue their own identities. Good is also about giving others hope, being present with others when they are afraid or alone. That was Papoy. She helped socialize foster kittens, up to 50 of them actually. She was always up for cuddles with me, and that is also true about me. I seek to empower us all. I seek to give you space to be who you are. I seek to give hope and to be present with others in their pain. How the hell can someone look at me and Papoy and tell me that I'm going to hell? My life and Papoy's life have been ones of gentleness and love, albeit mine involved a greater arc towards that destination than Papoy's. So my husband and I are working on a special episode for you about our experiences with Papoy's illness and her death. I will be talking about the experience with a special emphasis on how it was processed through the lens of a former Christian, myself, who has a major fear of illness, dying, and death. We will get that episode out to you as soon as we can, but we are also being pulled in multiple directions as we have another short film that we are working on to submit to a local film festival, and will be featuring Papoy and our lessons learned. So keep an eye out for that episode on Everyone's Agnostic, because it will be popping up off of the regular release schedule. So with that, I just want to close with a couple of announcements. There's a few podcasts that have come out that we have been privileged to be the guests on. If you go and look for Embrace the Void, episode 77, I was the guest with GW and Aaron. It was super duper fun. Those guys are crazy smart. And then also Cass was invited on to the podcast called Brainstorm. There are no numbers on those episodes, so you can just go and look for that. Additionally, we have recorded episodes with the following podcasts, but they have not yet been released: The Ginger Snaps, The Cellar Door Skeptics, and Believe It or Not. And just a reminder that we have some badass Say Yes to What Is stickers thanks to listeners Christy and Bonnie. $5 for 5 stickers, including shipping and handling within the USA. Check them out on our website, everyone'sagnostic.com, for more information. If you become a Patreon supporter, and if you are already a Patreon supporter, you get one free. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. As a reminder, you can email us anytime at everyone'sagnostic@gmail.com if you want to be considered as a future guest, or you have a great idea for a future guest, or if you want us to join you on your podcast. We would love to visit you. You want to buy some merch or sponsor us or join our online Facebook community or submit some fan art. If you don't know what I look like, just go look it up and you'll be inspired. Don't worry about it. Additionally, you can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Cass and I both have our own Twitter account, so check us out. I put a lot of shit out there. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoy this episode with my friend Emily, and here she is.
So, good morning, you guys.
Morning.
What's up, yo?
You're sitting there together, right?
Yes, we
Yeah,
are.
she came over. She lives 20 minutes from my house.
All right.
Yeah.
So, we're talking to Emily.
Yep.
Yep.
You're going by Emily S. today? Or
I was just
Emily?
going to go by Emily.
Emily? Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So
fine.
Do
your
I need a last name? I'm being like Cher. I
Not
only have
really.
one name.
Yeah. You only have
Or Bono.
But
I am-
Bono's a douchebag.
I'm the Emily.
So, how do you guys know each other?
We met each other at that former fundamentalist support group that I help run in Minnesota. And I think we met 3-4 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
You guys hang out or just that one time?
Yeah, she's
Oh,
one
no,
of my best
we
friends.
hang out all the
She's
time.
the best.
She's my bitch and I love
Yeah,
her.
you're my bitch.
So, whose bitch am I if you guys are each other's bitch? Can I be somebody's
I don't
bitch?
know,
Ours,
man.
obviously.
Oh, he's our bitch?
Apparently.
Okay, Cass is our bitch.
Well,
Go give me a sandwich.
well, that episode that we did about, making sure that I'm not too misogynist to have a woman on without making her a token. So now we've switched all the way over to go make a sandwich, Cass.
That's really what equality is. It's just making men have to do the horrible things that you've been making us do. That's equality.
That's the thing about equality when it first emerges, is it really is like, okay, we don't just start from zero. I've made 1,000 sandwiches and now we start with one, and so go make it. No, there's some payback there. I mean, there's some, or at least a desire for it. I don't know.
I don't box for my health. I box the patriarchy,
It's fun to hit things. I get that.
It is.
I've seen your kick. It's pretty wicked. I mean, you could break some ribs with that thing.
That's the idea. Get your patriarchy away from me. Yeah.
Emily, are you do anything like martial arts or something to?
I don't. I don't do anything. I'm a student, so I go to school and I work, and that's my whole life.
How old are you?
Like
I'm 31.
your big accomplishment is basically surviving.
Yeah, it's all about the survival.
Yeah.
And I do fine, but I don't have fun like Marie does. Marie has time for fun.
I do have time for fun.
I haven't gotten to that point.
Are you working on an undergrad or master's or what?
No, so I have a bachelor's degree that's not worth the paper it's written on. And I decided to go back to school for nursing, and
Yeah.
I always kind of wanted to do that, but the school that I was going to when I was a young college student had a really good scholarship deal. And I took it, but they didn't offer nursing. And so instead of being like, well, I could probably find a decent scholarship somewhere else, I just was like, fuck it, I'll just get a psychology degree. That seems useful. And it is useful if you want to read people better, but
Yeah, I was going to say, I wish I had one. Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, I now I'm going into nursing. I work in healthcare. I work in hospice. So, and I actually really like that, which is kind of funny because most people, when I tell them what I do, they're like, "Oh, I could never do that." And I'm like, "Well, you could. You might actually really like it."
So is that what we call end of life care?
Yeah, end of life care, palliative care, hospice. I work with elderly people, not like sick people. So there's kind of a circle of life thing going on, and it fits, and it's also a lot calmer than working healthcare in like a hospital.
Yeah,
which is we have our moments of chaos. Don't get me wrong, but it's nice. It fits my anxiety pattern.
Yeah.
You can't, it's not as dangerous. I'm super awkward with this mic in my face. I'm hoping I'll kind of forget about it because, like, obviously Marie and I can shoot the shit for a long time, but
yeah. Well, yeah, it's always more anxious when the red light is on. I mean, you're being recorded and the whole world's going to hear it for the end of time.
I mean, like,
so take a deep breath.
The download was like what, 1,000,
1,000 plus. Yeah.
And then I told my family about it. And they're going to listen to it.
Is that an point of
a little bit?
Yeah,
it is. Well, just because I would probably say different things if I hadn't.
Why'd you do that?
I know it was stupid, but oh well.
We can put it under a different name.
No, I mean they
just
know
be like,
my voice.
I got canceled.
They canceled.
I'm so sad. They said I was boring.
No, I think most of what I would say I'll still say. So that's fine.
So let's dive in. So Emily, I know you pretty well.
Yeah,
but
pretty well.
For the sake of our dear listeners who don't, can you tell me a little bit about how you grew up in Minnesota and what the environment was like for you religiously, and if you're comfortable talking about racially what your experiences were like?
Oh, I'm comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, my mom, was Jewish. My dad is Native American. And so that has shaped my experience of, oh shit, I'm having so much trouble. I'm sorry. Crap. Can we
Yep, we're taking a break.
Okay. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's really
I want to do a good job. Okay.
You can just put your phone down. She wrote some notes on her phone and she's
so I didn't
consulting
forget
them.
anything, but
we can just let it kind of come up naturally. I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Okay, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm going to chill the fuck out and do this.
So you were saying that you were raised, your mom is Jewish.
Yeah.
Was Jewish. She's passed away. Your dad is Native American. From what tribe?
From the Ojibwe tribe.
Tribe.
Minnesota Chippewa tribe is like the technical name of it. But he's White Earth, Ojibwe.
Okay.
So from northern Minnesota.
And so for people who can't see Emily right now, I'm looking at you and your skin is like kind of like whitish. And I look at you and I'm like, oh, she's white. Like when I first met you, I was like, oh, you're white.
My mom was really white.
Right. Right. But then I think when we've talked, you shared a very different experience growing up.
Yes.
Where you didn't feel white. Are you comfortable talking about that?
I didn't get to be white when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I grew up down here in Minneapolis, and I lived with my mother, because my parents were not together when I was young. They'd gotten married and then they gotten divorced, and it was me, my mother, and my brother living in a low income housing area. There was a lot of like single moms, mostly.
Yeah.
Very ethnically diverse. The kids were like all the colors of the rainbow, and it was a good neighborhood for a kid like me to be growing up in, just because nobody was like, everyone was different. So nobody was different. And it was, for a small child, that was,
you didn't feel like you stuck out.
Yeah. I didn't stick out. It was like a United Colors of Bennington ad, basically. So that's where I started. And then my parents got remarried when I was about 4 or 5. There's pictures where my dad got his wish, or his family. I'm not sure who decided it was a good idea for everyone to dress in powwow regalia.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, these pictures, Marie. I wish I still had some to show you. I don't. My dad might still have.
It's embarrassing. Or like,
well, no, they're cute, but it's just a little weird. Like, my mom was dressed legit like Pocahontas.
Oh, really?
And she looked pretty, don't get me wrong, but like, you can kind of see her Jewish family in the background kind of being like,
What the fuck?
yeah, there was a definite what the fuck vibe to this whole thing.
Was there any like Jewishness in the wedding too, or they just kind
No.
of they sided to the more Ojibwe side of things?
Compromises had to be made, and that was the compromise that they made.
It's all entirely.
I think the one thing that they might have done is when you get married, you step on a glass.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
To like congratulate the new couple, and I think they did that.
Okay.
So like imagine these people dressed in like powwow regalia, but they're stepping on a champagne glass and like l'chaim, and you're like,
such a unique blend of cultures.
yeah.
Well, what I find odd about this is it's a second marriage, and normally there's not a ceremony. You just kind of do justice of the peace because you've been there, done that.
Well, that's what they did the first time. The first time they were pretty
They got
young.
it backwards.
Yeah, they got it backwards. They were pretty young.
Well,
and
actually, it's not backwards. It's just if you hadn't done it, yeah, let's do it right this time. Do you know the story about how they fell out of love and then back in?
I do. Yeah. I mean, they were. I mean, falling out of love maybe isn't quite the right word. I think one thing about my parents is that they did always love each other, but they couldn't really live together.
Mm.
And both sides acknowledged that like this was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like the first time they acknowledged it, and the second time they acknowledged
Yeah.
Well, how old were they when they got married the first time?
it. The first time they got married, they would have been 23 and 25, I think.
What about the second time?
So they were young. They were still young. 28, 29, 30, 31. So they were my age. They were 31.
Okay.
Yeah.
Much more mature.
Yeah, so much better.
Well, and that might be why are they married to this day?
No, they're not.
Okay, it still didn't work out. Okay.
It still didn't work out, but they gave it the old
I'm sorry.
college
Your
try.
mother's deceased. That's
She is, yes, but they weren't. She was.
they divorced before she died.
They divorced before before she died. So
Well, I don't want to make it all about them, but I find that interesting, and I guess you're 4 and he's back in the house, and
yeah,
you were talking about how it shaped you. Now, I'm curious about this phrase that you used. You said, growing up, I didn't get to be white. Is that what you
that
said?
is what
And if
I
so,
said.
what did you mean?
Yeah. Okay. So when I was about 5, my parents decided that we were going to move up to northern Minnesota, and we didn't have any family in the area or anything. My dad has family over. I don't know how much you know about Minnesota, but my dad.
Nothing.
Okay, there's a bunch of Indian reservations up here. And my
Okay.
dad has family at one that is sort of in like the middle-ish area of the state. And then he's got family that lives way the heck up north. I guess the decision between my parents was like, let's get away from everybody. We're going to strike out on our own with the kids. And so we got in a van and started driving like they didn't know where we were moving to.
Oh my God.
We didn't have a plan. We literally just had like one of those giant moving vans and a car.
Now, would religion have anything to do with acting out on that much faith?
I'm not really sure how religious my parents were at that time. So my dad is not a religious person.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always kind of jokingly called him a heathen. He does believe in things, like he believes in God, but not in like a Christian sense. He's got some of that like native spirituality going.
Mm-hmm. Great spirit.
Yeah, no, I mean that's like kind of.
Sure.
That's not really like the kind of wording he uses, but it's sort of the idea behind it.
But the answer would be no. It wasn't an act of faith in God for them to just
They didn't
head out.
They didn't break out in an act of faith. I think it was more just an act of fleeing. They wanted to get away from the family, kind of on both sides, to just sort of make it on their own and not have the grandparents interfering in like child raising and life decisions.
And was your mom at this time as religious? Like,
she was not as religious when I was a small child. I actually, when when we were little, apparently she had told me that she used to send us on like a bus would come around to take kids to church, and she would send us away so that she could like sit on the couch and smoke cigarettes and like have some chill mommy time of her own before being a wine mom was a thing.
Yeah.
And I 100% don't blame her, because even as an atheist, I think I might send my kids off to church to have some chill mommy time if I had children.
Free daycare.
Yeah.
The side effect of indoctrination.
Yeah, a little indoctrination never
heard anyone said people who were trying to heal from it on a podcast.
But was it a Christian church or Jewish synagogue?
It was a Christian church. We did go to the synagogue sometimes with like my grandparents, for things like bar and bat mitzvahs or like, weddings, funerals, like stuff like that. We didn't go for high holidays, or I don't think my mom was really like, she didn't really want us to be, we were Jewish, but she didn't want us to be that Jewish.
Okay. So you weren't bat mitzvahed.
No, I was not.
Okay. Well, let's get to your personal spirituality as far as like, I guess where I think you were heading was that your mom became like, did she become a Christian? Or
yeah. So it's kind of a funny story because, she was Jewish. Her family's Jewish. She was raised Jewish. She went to the synagogue, did all the nice Jewish girl things that nice Jewish girls are expected to do. And then when she was 19 in college, she got approached by some Jews for Jesus, which you've probably heard of that, right?
Sure, for sure.
Okay. And found them convincing, I guess. I mean, at first she laughed because Jews don't have a lot of patience for Jesus in my personal, knowledge of Jewish people. They don't like that very much. But if you're vulnerable and looking for something more than what you have, I can see why, this ready-made sort of like, we'll be your best friends and we'll all hang out and you just have to join our little Jesus fan club. And I can see why that would be.
Was she kind of at a vulnerable point at that time?
Yeah, she was. I mean, she was in college. She was studying a major that she had no interest in. She was still living with her parents, didn't have a whole lot of friends at school, was kind of isolated. She didn't live on campus. Mm-hmm. And so something about living on campus in college is like how you make real friends in college. Mm-hmm. And she didn't really have that chance to do that. And so they just saw her like being lonely and sad and Jewish. Yeah. And they're like, we can snap this one up. And they did.
Yeah. We call that love bombed in some other episodes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep. I've definitely heard about love bombing and that's definitely what happened to my mother.
So what point did she, I'm assuming, start, I want to use my words carefully. I'm just going to pick some words and you can decide if those are the right words or not. Okay. But like, at what point did she start indoctrinating you as a child?
As a child? Like most children, I don't remember that much before I was about 4.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that the indoctrination really started when we moved up to northern Minnesota.
Yeah.
Because we were new in town, and any small town, we moved into kind of an insular community.
With other native people? Or
no. So when we moved, my dad looked very, very native. He had, a black braid down to his ass, and he wore a leather jacket, and it was summer, so he was more darkly complected than he, how usually brown I can get in the summer.
So brown.
Well, you saw that picture of me.
Yeah.
No, I get really brown, and he gets more brown than that. So he looked very native.
Yeah.
And when we got in the van and started driving, and we literally stopped at every, according to my father. So my dad has a propensity to tell stories. It's sort of a native thing. So I just take him with a grain of salt. But that we drove, and every now and again we stopped at like a real estate place, and he went in and he basically said we just kept going until somebody came up and shook my hand and talked to me without me having to like be in there say
he was
something.
waiting for someone to get over their fucking racism.
Basically, yeah. And so somehow we got like 4 hours. Sorry, that's probably a really bad ADR.
No, you're fine.
So we got 4 hours north of Minneapolis before somebody just shook his hand, and that's how we ended up there.
What a fucking like adventure.
Yeah,
keep driving until you run out of racism.
Well, and that's funny because we actually, the place that we ended up was kind of on the border of a reservation, and racism in the borders of reservation is like 1,000,000 times stronger than it is even in like other parts of small town USA, I think. I'm not sure why, but it just seems to turn out that way. That's sort of
because they end up bumping heads a lot.
Yeah,
more.
I think probably. Yeah. There's a lot of misconceptions there. So
being up there made your mom more conservative?
Yeah. So as a young woman, my mom was not super conservative. She was, she was a Democrat. She voted Democrat. Like, listen to my Christianity coming through. She voted Democrat.
How dare she?
How dare she? But, she was like a normal early 30s person, late 20s, early 30s, normal person. And then when we moved up there, we didn't have any community. We didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
We were the only people in the town who looked
not white.
Mm. And people let us know that.
Really?
On a fairly regular basis.
What did that look like?
Well, like when I was a kid, we'd go out to eat as a family. And I can remember, I would say on a fairly regular basis, we'd go somewhere and we'd sit down and wait for them to like bring us a menu and give us some drinks and we'd wait and we'd wait. And
so
we'd
they
wait.
were reluctant to serve you.
Yeah.
Kind of cold-shouldered you?
Just kind of cold-shouldered us. And,
Got it.
And other people would get their menus, get their food, and we'd still be waiting. And my dad would be slowly building up his like righteous indignation.
Did he ever like lash out at anyone, or you felt like he didn't have that freedom?
He didn't. He would lash out a little, but I would say not in an inappropriate way. More like,
excuse me,
like,
miss.
Are you kidding me? Like, we've been here for 45 minutes and they got their food and they left and we don't have water.
Wow.
What's the reason for that? And then he'd get really like, kind of try to make them admit that they're being hella racist.
Did you guys join a church in that town?
We did. So I think we joined the church because we needed friends. We needed comrades, whatever. My parents needed to be able to talk to other adults.
Yeah.
And my mom was, a Christian, and my dad was Christianish for my mother. And so, they ended up joining this small, church that it just happened to be one that was close to our house. You have to drive at least 20 minutes to get anywhere up there. So we went to basically the first church and it was found acceptable. And so that's where we ended up. And there were, it was, I still have fond memories of like some of the people in that church and some of the things that we did there, even though now, I think everything's bullshit. But
and how many years you were up in that northern city, living there? Going to that church?
I was up there for about 10 years.
10 years. Okay.
I didn't go to that church for 10 years. But we were up there for about 10 years.
So like 14 did you move back to Minneapolis?
I moved. Let's see. So we moved up when I was 5, and I moved back down when I was 16. So 11 years.
Okay.
Math. Huh.
And then, so when did religion start getting like really personal for you? Like you were being brought to church, your mom was really getting into it. At what point did you start internalizing it and start focusing your attention and your thoughts on it? So
I was always an anxious child. I'm an anxious person.
Me too. We should hang out.
We should. We have so much to talk about.
Misery loves company.
I'll give you some Xanax. You can give me some Xanax. It'll be. I mean, shush.
I'm going to get my nursing license taken before I have one. I do not have access to Xanax. Just putting that out there. Okay.
We can cut all of that.
No way am I cutting that.
We'll give you some Xanax if you do.
I love you, Marie.
I love you too.
Okay. Anyway.
So when did it become personal for you?
When it became personal?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as an anxious child, learning about things like hell, it was very immediate, very real. I have a very good imagination. It was even better as a child because it had less constraints on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I could immediately imagine how awful hell would be.
Mm-hmm.
And my particular church's belief was if you could understand what hell was, then you were old enough to go there, basically.
Jesus.
Like they had a very young idea of the age of accountability.
Okay.
So like Jewish people don't believe that the age of accountability is like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
Which is still pretty young for hell, but like not like 5-year-old young.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 5-year-old me was sure I was going to go to hell. And so when they were doing that, thing where they play the same song,
Altar call?
The altar call, but they play the same song at like varying intensities, and like
Oh, yeah.
he sways up front and like quietly asks you to come invite Jesus into your heart until everybody's like a weeping mess, and emotional manipulation at its finest.
Child abuse at its worst.
So gross.
Hey,
But
easy.
anyways.
I was that guy.
Well, dude,
We're looking at you, Cass.
you were emotionally abusive.
I was. I'll own that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know better now, and that matters too.
Yeah, it does.
So, but yeah, so I went up and I got down on my knees and, followed my Sunday school teacher in saying, the sinner's prayer, and felt better. I think it sort of helped with that obsessive part of me to say the sinner's prayer and to know I was forgiven. And if I died right now, I wouldn't go to hell.
Yeah.
Well, that's just like, I don't know, maybe settling into a hot bathtub because you're just like, the anxiety can be abated or at least, mitigated by buying the fire insurance, right?
Yeah, definitely. But it's sort of a self-perpetuating cycle, and it leads to some kind of obsessive compulsive, and I don't use that word lightly, but some obsessive compulsive thoughts and behaviors, because you learn that if you have anxiety about dying and going to hell, that you need to just ensure your salvation by saying the sinner's prayer. So, like as a child, I spent an inordinate amount of time saying the sinner's prayer.
Because you never felt like you got it right.
Well, I felt like it was right, but what if? What if it wasn't right?
Well, some would say their experience, like so they get right with God and it feels right. And there's scriptures that say that you should be certain about your faith, because if you're not,
Right.
then that might be the Holy Spirit convicting you that you've backslidden.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely know exactly what you're talking about. And I definitely struggled with that idea that, like, if you're not sure, then maybe you're not saved.
Yeah.
And
Just do it again
Right.
let's just do it again just for good measure.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah.
Rededication.
Rededicate. Yeah, they don't call it
Oh, man.
coming to Jesus at that point. Then you're just rededicating.
So many triggers right now. So gross.
So fucking gross.
So what happened after that? Like you started, you emotionally invested and decided that this is the thing that you wanted to have to assuage your fear of hell. That aside, then, like, I'm going to go ahead and say, how did your relationship with God manifest itself? Like, what was that experience like? Did you enjoy having a fake sky daddy to talk
did,
to? Or did
yes.
it make you even more neurotic in a way?
I mean, both. So, I was a very sincere Christian. As a child, like I really believed it with all of my heart. I was that annoying little girl who tried to convert all of her friends who in that northern Minnesota town.
They don't like that.
Literally everyone's a Christian.
Oh, that too.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you're trying to convert your friends to your own like
Special brand.
special brand of Jesus juice, but it's one
Jesus juice, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like if there was like 6 bars in town and like 6 churches. Everybody already had their own brand of Jesus juice. They didn't need mine.
Yeah.
And mine was my own, like a mix of like what the church taught me, things I picked up from who even knows where I picked them up. They just came from the ether.
Yeah.
I thought God was telling me them, but not in like a schizophrenic way.
Just in if anyone gets it, we get it.
Yeah.
So at what point in your life did you begin to question your faith?
Well, that was a long process. So
Sure.
I'm a type 1 diabetic. This is relevant, I promise. And I have been since I was 3 years old. When I was about 8, my family, my mother got really into the televangelist Benny Hinn. Do you know who Benny Hinn is?
Sure, yeah.
He's a schmuck.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
he's a charlatan.
Yeah, definitely a charlatan. But my mother got really into him, and we'd wake up before school every morning at like 6 o'clock and watch Benny Hinn together. And that was kind of like a thing that she and I did, especially. And she was like she felt convicted that the Lord had told her that we should make a pilgrimage to Ohio to get me healed of my diabetes because he's a faith healer. Yeah.
Ooh.
And so the family all packed up into the van and we drove for like 4 days. We took a family vacation. I think it's the only one we ever took in my whole life. Isn't that sad?
That's really
so
sad.
fucking sad.
Yeah.
But so we drove to Ohio and we had a lot of like good family experiences. Actually, it was relatively low stress for once. It was a good experience, and we drove out to see Benny Hinn at some convention center in Ohio.
Did you have to pay to see him?
I'm sure that we did.
Okay. I was just curious.
I don't actually know.
I doubt it, though.
Does he make you pay for the potential to be healed? Or
I don't. Oh, well,
No,
the honor?
they wouldn't do that.
No?
They take up an offering.
Oh, okay.
they did take up a lot of offerings. I do remember that. I don't remember if we had to pay because I was 8.
Okay.
So even if we did, that wasn't on me. Yeah, and they had a thing where they said any children in the audience who need healing, can come down and he'll pray for you. And we stood in this long ass line. And I remember him going down the line and praying for the children.
So you met Benny Hinn?
Oh, I met Benny Hinn. He put his hands on me.
Gross.
Yeah, really gross. He put his hands on my shoulders and he said, "Spirit of diabetes, leave this little girl," and pushed me a little. Like,
Mm-hmm.
to like,
you
know
push
how
back?
You were supposed to fall out.
I was probably supposed to fall out, but I didn't realize that. So, so I just was like,
Emily.
and then he moved on to the next kid, and that was my whole meeting with Benny Hinn. It was very much like a right down the row, fast,
Speed healing.
it's like drive-through healing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you had a drive-through healing with Benny Hinn.
With Benny Hinn.
You
And
forgot to fall over because nobody debriefed you.
nobody told me.
Okay.
I was the dramatic
And so then you were
child.
healed.
I would have done it.
So then you were healed. You went home, stopped taking Ritalin.
No, insulin.
Insulin. The thing that starts with an N. And everything's been great.
Something like that. So then, that night, I was trying to, how did they phrase it? Cass, there's like a pastory thing that they say that you're like claiming your healing, but that's not quite right.
Oh.
You're like receiving it by.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
By reciting something?
No. It's like
It's a phrase to explain what it means, like that you are mentally.
you're like walking in faith to like accept your healing.
Yeah.
So you're going to act as if it
Yeah.
happens so that it happens.
I'm claiming the
basically.
blood
yeah.
of Christ
Well,
on
Yeah,
my
yeah,
diabetes or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Well, there's that passage where we're supposed to call those things which are not as though they were,
Mm.
Yes.
which is faith, being sure and certain of what you hope for and what you cannot see.
Yes. Yep. That's the one. So all of that faithy stuff.
Mhm.
My 8-year-old self, obviously, I really believed. 8-year-olds are not the most credulous creatures. And I really believed, like, okay, the Bible says that God will heal me if I believe, and I believe, so it's a done deal. And
Mhm.
so that night
Claim it.
I
Claim it.
claimed it. Thank you. That's what I was looking
Mhm.
for. So I claimed it by not giving my insulin. And my mother was like a little bit leery about that. She was like, well,
Wasn't it hypocritical of her? She just went and got you healed.
I know, and I think the part of her that, was a wise woman was like, this is a dumb idea.
Yeah.
And the part of her that was like just on fire for Jesus
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
was like, well, we got to try. So she let me.
And I think that's one of the most unhealthy things about Christianity is that tension that it causes in the mind. It's cognitive dissonance.
Mhm.
It's, oh, ye of little faith. If you keep taking the insulin, then you lack the faith. And faith is what is required for you to be healed. So the very fact that you won't stop taking, that's what God's waiting on you to do before he'll heal you.
Exactly.
And that's mind fuckery. And I think it goes into the body. I think the body puts out stress and tension and probably muscles tighten up and it can.
All that cortisol, baby.
The stakes are high.
Yeah.
The stakes are high. Your child is sick and you're involved with the creator of the universe. You're engaged in interaction and asking him to do things. He's about to do it or he may do it. And in a way, God's withholding that until I display an act of faith. Like Peter had to get out of the boat and step on the water before, a miracle could happen. If he was a coward, then that was a lack of faith. Anyway, it's just hard on the body and the mind to be put in that kind of, position of just internal tension and
Yeah.
tension.
Because they're
tension with
asking you to
God.
give up your critical thinking,
Yeah,
essentially.
It's horrifically emotionally abusive.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
And also if you have an illness that you need medicine to manage, it's also physically really damaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because spoiler alert,
Do you still have diabetes?
I still have diabetes.
What?
I know, right? Jesus.
But Benny Hinn.
I know, fucking Benny Hinn.
He pushed you.
He pushed me. It's because I didn't fall.
Oh.
That's why.
Everyone knows if you want to get rid of your diabetes, you
have
need
to
to
hit
fall
your head
over.
really hard. It gets rid of all your problems.
So anyway, okay. So you didn't get healed.
So I
you
didn't get
take
healed.
your insulin
I
for
did
a
not
night.
give my insulin.
How did that feel?
Well, I woke up about 20 times to pee because that's what happens when your blood sugar gets high. You start kicking out a lot of, this is probably not something anybody wants to
Talk more about your pee, please.
More pee. But
Yes.
anyway, yeah, so I got up a million times during the night because my blood sugar was getting higher and continuing to grow higher.
Yeah.
And then in the morning when I tested my blood sugar, the meter just said high. Like it was so high that it didn't read on the meter.
Jesus is testing you?
Jesus was not testing me. I had failed at being healed.
Oh, is that that's how you integrated it in your head?
Yeah.
You fucked up.
It had to be my fault because if I had believed better, then Jesus would have healed me. So obviously my lack of belief, like I hadn't believed right.
Yeah.
Now, is all that after just one day of not taking the shot?
Oh yeah. So, I mean, the thing about type 1 diabetes is that your body doesn't make any insulin. And without the insulin, any glucose or any sugar in your body can't go into your cells. And so it just goes around in your bloodstream. And so it rises very fast. I've gotten high like this before from like if my insulin pump tubing kinks during the night and I sleep through it and then in the morning it's super high, or it does not take very long for somebody to get very, very sick.
Yeah.
It happens very fast.
Yeah.
It's not like type 2 where people can kind of
Ride it out and their body still makes some insulin so they don't have to like, they can have bad blood sugars, but they're not going to spike like I would. Right.
So
then did you keep not taking insulin
well, no,
to
so then
double down?
My mother thankfully was like, okay, you can't do this.
Yeah.
And I was mad at her for it because I thought she was like ruining my chance at being healed.
Yeah.
My God. That is tragic.
But she was like, no, you'll die. So, yeah. So it was tragic and it was scarring.
Absolutely.
It definitely fucked me up. And like, I think it's like, even now when I obviously no longer believe in faith healing or anything like that, like you want to get my dander up. You try and tell me that you know, you're going to do something faith healing related.
Mm-hmm.
And ooh boy.
Yeah.
I do not have any tolerance for that bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe in your line of work, you're sitting next to the bedside of a dying woman, and her family comes in, and they want to lay hands on her, and you're sitting in the room. You've got to leave the room, or else you're going to say something, right?
Well, actually, at work, I'm very good at compartmentalizing.
Uh-huh.
And so I've always been good at that. That's why I kept my faith for so long.
Mm.
Yep.
At work, my theory is that whatever that person believes, I'll believe that with them.
Huh.
So obviously I don't believe it, you know, I don't sincerely believe it because I don't believe any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever gives them comfort, whatever...
You go along with it.
I go along with it because you know what? They don't need to be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think that's beautiful. And that's strong on your part.
Yeah.
Because I'm saying that if you were truly triggered, you'd have to leave the room or you'd be in fetal position or something, you know, because just seeing a person lay on of hands and try to give this person hope that they're going to be healed just breaks your heart because you know that it's going to, you know, it ain't going to happen. It's not going to deliver and it's going to backfire. And I know where this is going. And so fuck y'all. I'm going to go smoke a cigarette.
Well, does it make a difference, Emily, that all these people are older?
I mean, I think it does help that they're older.
Mm-hmm.
It also helps though that, you know, I'm busy. Like I have a lot of patience, and so if somebody's having like an extended prayer session or something like that, you know, and I need to go take care of them, I can absolutely be like, okay, we need a couple minutes to take care of your loved one. Can you step out, please?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then take care of them and then leave.
So how old were you when you stopped taking insulin and all this tension built up with your mom?
Well, so that was at 8.
Okay.
And she made me start taking it again, obviously. And I just sort of was like, okay, well, I must have done it wrong. And next time I'll do it better.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'll believe harder and it'll work.
Were you ever prayed for healing again after that?
Yeah, many times.
Oh, really?
So we switched from church to church when I was a child, because my mom eventually got, I think it was Benny Hinn's fault, to be honest, because, you know, that's very like charismatic, and the church that we went to was not, and she felt like she needed to have us involved in a church that was more like Benny Hinn, more, you know, kind of charismatic
yeah.
and flashy.
Yeah.
And so we started church hopping. We went to a couple different places. We went to a Baptist church that didn't really fit what my mother believed. We went to Assemblies of God, which she liked that, but it was farther away.
Oh.
So we only did that for maybe 6 months. And we went to a non-denominational church, so we kind of hit all of the major stops, I think, of evangelical Christianity.
There's a scripture that comes to mind that I used to, you can get locked into these things. And just as I read this, I want you to think about it. And I know you don't have to think about it. You probably lived this, it sounds like. But John 15:7 says, "If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you.
Yeah.
So the condition upon your prayers getting answered is if you remain in me and my words remain in you, then you can ask for whatever you want and it'll be done. You can move mountains if you have the right amount of faith. And so if it doesn't work the first time, then, you're figuring out, you're going to white knuckle this thing into existence because it's worth it. I'm worth it, and my diabetes sucks, and I want out, and I want to be touched by the hand of God just like anybody else.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a lot. It's a lot to carry, especially as a young girl.
Yeah, it definitely was, and I think that it fed into the anxiety I had about not being saved, because if I were really saved, surely God would do this for me because he knows how much this sucks. And it was just such a horrible self-perpetuating anxiety spiral.
Yeah.
And you couldn't win because you can't really argue with the God of the universe.
Yeah. I relate to that.
So did you go to college right out of high school?
I did, yes. I went to college directly after high school.
How far away from home?
Well, so my experience was a little different because I went to high school away from home. I went to an art school.
Boarding school?
A boarding school. Well, that makes it sound really fancy. It was a public school that just happened to have a dorm because it serves the whole state. And so a lot of us came from outstate area and didn't have anywhere to live. So I was not a private school kid.
So are you an artist?
I mean, my soul is an artist's soul, but my body is a practical, or my life is a practical life. I like art, and my thing was theater, and I'm.
You write too,
and I write. I'm working on a screenplay actually right now.
Ooh.
So yeah, we have to talk about that.
We'll talk.
Point.
We'll make it happen.
So it was a private school.
Well, no, not really.
Okay.
It was
Right.
it was a, what do they call them? Like a magnet school.
Okay.
But it wasn't private. My mom didn't have to pay anything for the school, just for me to like live there, which was expensive. So I started my college experience a couple years early because I didn't live with my mom. I lived, in a dorm by myself, etc. Yeah. So then I went to college up north, and
Can I ask a question about your high school experience? Yeah. So since you were in art school, you're away from your family. Were there any, was that an opportunity for you at all to question what you were believing? Was that an influential time in your life?
Yeah, it was super influential, and I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in Christian Republican country.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot of things about people that were really terrible. Where I grew up, there was a lot of anti-queer sentiment that I think really stuck to me.
Yeah.
And then I went to the arts high school and oh, hey, everyone's queer here, basically. And that was super good for me because it made me realize that the church was wrong about what it said.
Right. But that didn't destroy everything for you. It just kind of started to get you to thinking about a nuance.
Yeah, it actually made me really uncomfortable because it was so different from what I had learned all growing up north. And it was here's all these people who I really like, and they're really amazing, and they're nothing like what the church and small town Minnesota has taught me they would be.
Yeah.
And that was really good.
For me, this is the kind of thing that, you're emerging into a more suitable version of Christianity for you because maybe you're cherry picking a little bit and you get excited because it's there is a Christianity, there's a Jesus that will love me just as I am, or that loves gays, and that the scriptures were either wrong or that's not actually what Paul was literally talking about. It's been misinterpreted. This is great because basically Christianity just expanded to include me. However, on the other hand, maybe in the back of your mind, it can cause doubts because it's wait a second, if it's wrong here, if the guys that wrote the Bible were wrong here, how am I supposed to trust the rest of it, which is supposed to be inerrant? And it can cause, once again, tension.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, definitely. So that was, it was mind blowing to me. You know, I also at this school, it was the first time I'd ever learned anything about evolution. So I went to public school in northern Minnesota, but it was a public school run by Christians. So somehow we never learned about evolution.
You know, I just got to stop. This is you guys. I've never been up there. I don't know anything about it, but it sounds so much like Oklahoma, and you can imagine that it's small towns. I was raised in a town of 1,500 people like you. There's Native American. What are they called? Reservations all over the place, and now there's like casinos all over the place. And the public schools, I kid you not, and of course that's what you're saying, are absolutely as Christian as a Christian school because the principal's Christian, the teachers are Christian, they're sneaking in, you know, the 10 Commandments and, you know, prayer before class or whatever all the time. So you're right. It's just these small rural towns where Christianity is pervasive. It's almost the same as going to a Christian school.
Except, you know, the taxpayers pay for it, so...
There you go.
So then what happened for you in college then? Like, did those experiences... When did you really, really start doubting, like, the crux of it all? I
mean, you know, it happened... It was cyclical. So I had doubts in my early teens that I managed to sort of hand wave away. And then again, I had doubts when I went to the arts high school, and managed to sort of compartmentalize things. I think that was when I was like, well, God's just wrong about gay people. And that, like, somehow I managed to be like, scriptures are inerrant, you know, God knows everything, whatever, but he's wrong in this case. And I just let that sit in my brain somehow, which kept the doubts, you know, from taking over completely. And then in college, I had some more hardcore doubting happening and spent a lot of time thinking, I wish that it wasn't real. I wish that I could not believe, but I know that it's true. And so I don't really have a choice. I have to believe because otherwise I'll go to hell.
Yeah.
So even though I think God's an asshole.
There's the abusive relationship.
Yeah.
I'm staying with the wife beater.
Yep.
Can you talk about your experience? And I know the story, but like the experience at the wedding.
Okay. So the setup for this is several years back from that. But so I met a girl. I suppose I should give her a name. I don't know if I want to use her real name.
First initial?
Okay. I met a girl named Elle, and she and I became good friends, and she was a hardcore Christian, a pastor's kid, but like also just like a really nice human being and a really sincere Christian. She really believed it, and her enthusiasm was sort of catching. She wanted to do discipling. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Did they do that? Okay. I'm not. Some people don't know what that is.
Well, maybe for me, can you tell me what that means for you?
Yeah. So, like, discipling, it's basically like you get together and you talk about faith and
the two of you,
Jesus and the Bible. And,
so, like, you edify each other within your faith.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's peer to peer in that sense, and that maybe that as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another.
Got it.
Yep, that's the one.
Got it.
Okay. So Elle was discipling me, and we were pretty close, and we started to. She lives in Chicago, so most of this was over the phone. But like her family is from Minnesota, so she would come up to like visit her family, and we'd visit each other, and we'd talk, and she invited me to go with her to IHOP. Not the pancake restaurant, the International House of Prayer in Kansas City.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the pancake restaurant would have been a lot better.
Yeah.
Even though you have celiac.
Even though I have celiac.
Yeah, I've been to IHOP, 24-hour prayer, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's really intense. so we went there together, and I was very triggered by it. I had a lot of reactions. They do a lot of faith healing type stuff there. Obviously, I don't react well to that, having been burned by that so many times, in my life, and kind of realizing that like diabetes is a chronic illness. It's not going anywhere, and like God's not going to do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I let them do the praying and the laying on of hands and all that shit, and it obviously still didn't do anything. And eventually I told her, okay, no more. You can pray for me all you want, but don't touch me and don't bring me into it.
Yeah.
Which was probably part of the beginning of the end, I think, for my
That's
faith.
what I'm hearing.
Was being like this is bullshit.
It's ironic, but the Bible says hope deferred makes the heart sick. So
I mean,
you'd gotten to the place where I can't put any more hope in this because it's killing me to continue to be hopeful.
Even a blind pig can find an apple occasionally. The Bible can't be completely wrong.
What a phrase. What a phrase.
Yeah, a broken clock is right twice a day.
Right.
Oh God. Okay, so what happened next?
Okay, so this is my friend Elle, we just need to know about her because because of how my faith actually died. So during our discipling, my doubts were getting stronger and stronger. And I kept doubling down because I kept thinking, if you just fake it until you make it, like things will be okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I got into kind of like, oh, this is so gross. Like, some of those like Christian women's online magazines.
Yeah.
I think I hit up Focus on the Family.
Gross.
Oh, I can't believe I hit up Focus on the Family. They're so evil. Anyway, and was just trying so hard to be pious and modest and just like a good Christian. I threw away all my secular music. I am at heart a theater kid, so I had like a shitload of musicals and stuff, including, things like Rent and
that you threw away?
That I just tossed.
Does it make you cringe right now?
Oh
talking
God,
about
so
it?
cringed.
Mm-hmm.
All those I had so much good shit. I mean, I have it all now on MP3, but it's not the same. And I had an ex who bought me Rent when I told him about it.
Oh,
he was like, I bought you this, which was cute, but this is neither here nor there.
So you doubled down.
So I doubled down, and I threw away all my secular music. I stopped watching secular programs. I avoided stuff on the internet. Like I was trying to insulate myself from anything that might make me not think of Jesus and only Jesus.
Yeah.
Guard your hearts and minds. You were
right.
And there's a lot of scriptures about persistence, and whenever you probably use this term or at least heard this term, but whenever we have doubts and we're just in a place where we don't feel God, we don't hear God, we feel distant from God, we call it the dark night of the soul. And it only happens to super spiritual people because it's God's way of like withdrawing. And, all through the scriptures, he tested his followers, he tested their faith. And so you can spin it like, okay, this is dark. This is a dark night of the soul. I'm just going through this and I'm going to come out on the other side. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You survived that test. And so there's all kinds of mental gymnastics and ways to keep you, like I said, with the wife beater.
Right.
It's so fucked up.
Yeah.
Why would you take a test from someone who's not even telling you that they're giving you a test, nor what the test is, nor how to grade you on the test?
Well,
fucking drives me.
Obviously, nobody's doing that.
I know. That's what.
None of this is real.
None of this is about me right now. Okay. Anyway, just so angry.
I'm with you. I feel the anger too.
So anyway, keep going on. So you're doubling down. You're getting really purified.
Yeah. So I'm doubling down. I'm getting really purified. I think I was reading something from, I think it was like Relevant magazine. Have you heard of that one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you've heard of it. It's like a Christian women's magazine thing.
Well, it's not women's. It's a progressive Christian magazine. It's just
progressive.
Oh, okay.
I
But it's not just for women.
No,
Well,
I used to get it.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different one.
Oh,
I don't know. But anyway, so I'm reading a magazine. I don't think it was relevant. It might have been something else because it was not progressive. It was talking about how bathing suits cause men to stumble.
So they shouldn't wear any, I guess.
So we should swim naked is what I think now. But at the time, my thought was, okay, maybe this will help me like be more Christian.
To read the magazine?
Not to read the magazine, to like go into this modesty culture thing.
Oh.
Like maybe being more modest and more outwardly pious will help me feel more inwardly pious.
Yeah.
It's kind of the theory behind the hijab, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know much about the hijab, but
it's obviously there. It's there to protect men from lusting, but the women who keep wearing it, they'll insist that it's a part of their expression. It's a part of their faith. It's a way of being pious. It's a way of praying in a way. You know, they spiritualize it when in fact it was originated to keep men from lusting. I would suspect. Anyway.
Yeah. It's the same kind of idea.
Yeah.
I think. So I started Googling like modest clothing. And
really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Marie. Oh my God.
Delete my history, my browser history.
I know,
when
right?
I die. I don't want
My
you to know I was looking for
history.
purity culture stuff.
I know, it's so bad. More embarrassing than anything else on my browser history. Well, almost anything else.
So you learned how to dress modestly.
Yeah. So I'm Googling, about dressing modestly, and the thing is that the internet is a really big place.
Yeah.
So if you Google about that, you will also see sites from the other side. And there was a site called Jezebel, and the irony is not lost on me because, the Bible didn't think much of Jezebel.
No.
I kind of like her. She's my bitch.
She's great.
Yeah. But so this feminist website, like this pop feminist website, talking about why purity culture is bullshit. And I read it. I don't know why I was like, yeah, this looks like something I should read. But like, I know, right?
Jezebel, it's a biblical name. It's got to be good.
Yeah, I don't know. No warning bells went off. So I read it and I was like, she's got a really good point. Like, why is it up to me to keep men from staring at my boobs? Like, they don't have to. Or if they do stare at them, like, that's also not my problem.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which was sort of a mind-blowing idea at the time. But it did make me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Obviously, but I liked it. Like, I was like, I like this idea. And I kept reading. Like, on a daily basis, I'd just check out this website and I'd read it. And, some of the things that they talked about, I had more trouble than others. But it started to kind of invade my psyche a little bit. And I was definitely getting to be like feminist, very feminist.
Yeah.
And then Elle told me that she was engaged and she wanted me to be her bridesmaid. And, we were good friends. And so I said, all right. And she's, I ended up, over the next couple months, like, I was still reading this website. I was reading the Bible, but not to the same, like, extent.
Yeah.
I definitely liked Jezebel more than the Bible.
Yeah.
It's a lot more interesting. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, actually.
Sorry, not sorry.
And so the feminism was like seeping into my soul like a tea bag. I drove down to Chicago for Elle's wedding, and it was the first time I'd met her husband-to-be because she lives in Chicago, and I heard her talk about him. She talked about him like he hung the moon. She loved him. She's excited to have sex because she was a Christian who actually didn't have sex before she got married.
Wow.
I know, right? And I met this guy, and I immediately just got the willies. I was like, oh, he's not good news. But like, what can you do? They're about to get married. You can't be like, I get really bad vibes off your husband-to-be.
Can you just stop this whole wedding thing? Because I have feelings.
Yeah. I have feelings.
Yeah.
He seems like an abusive schmuck.
Yeah.
That must be something that might happen to, I don't know, a lot of women or something, because my wife, whenever her college roommate, her best friend, her maid of honor in our wedding, when she got married, or and she invited Mindy to be her maid of honor. Mindy was absolutely horrified of this guy, and it was that causes attention to her. It's like, what do I do? And she didn't do anything, and she ended up marrying that guy. And sure enough, he ended up being abusive, and they divorced a couple of years later.
All the same, there's nothing you could do. Like, you still couldn't have stopped.
Yeah.
It. Like,
well, and as far as I know, he's not he's not physically abusive.
Sure,
he's not
just standard patriarchal.
He's just standard patriarchal Christian man.
Yeah.
And they're still married.
Sorry, Cass.
Are they still together?
They are still married. They have children now. They, all of those expected milestones they hit. But yeah, but so at her wedding, there was a lot of praying from the bridesmaids and stuff. We did all this praying over her, praying over their marriage. There was so much fucking praying. And my faith was so wobbly. And I was praying so hard to just try to counteract how wobbly it felt. But my feminism kept creeping out because they kept talking about like what a good helpmeet she would be for her husband. Oh God, my whole face. I wish you could see how red my face is getting because it makes me so mad.
Yeah, it's getting red.
To think
She's angry.
of this wonderful, intelligent woman being relegated to being a helpmeet is disgusting.
Yeah.
But I tried, and it was 3 days of like nonstop wedding shit. And finally it's the day of, and we're all lined up. We're going to do our walks down the aisle to whatever. And so I walked down the aisle, and I'm standing in the front with 12 other bridesmaids, and we all turned
12?
to watch it. I know, right? It's terrible. We turn and we watch Elle come down the aisle, and she's just gorgeous. Like, she's everything you would expect a bride to be. Beautiful. She, and she walks to the front, and they start playing like worship music, and she falls down to her knees in this $2,500 gown, and it has her hands up, and she's like praying and worshiping. And I just have this moment of absolute clarity. There's nothing here. None of this is real, and there's nothing here.
Oh, I got chills.
And then there's a camera in my face. They're panning the bridesmaids' reaction. So while I'm panicking, my theater kid training comes into use. I've still got my hands up in the air. I'm doing the faux speaking in tongues and the faux hands in the air thing. And inside I'm like, there's nothing here. There's no God. There's nothing. And it was surreal.
I'm trying to think about that for a second, because I think there's times, when we see something done, an act that is so over the top, inappropriate, or I can't believe that we're taking faith to this level, or this is a place where faith really has no place, or I don't know. For me, 9/11, I've said it many times, but, when I saw faith, taken to that level, I was disgusted by it. And, as far as being willing to do anything for God. And so that was an extreme. And in this case, I mean, you didn't know this was going to happen, right? I mean, during the rehearsal, did they plan this?
They said, and then we'll have, a worship session. But she didn't, we didn't have a real worship session during the rehearsal. It was just like, then we'll have a worship session, and then they'll go up front and light the candles, blah, 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 blah,
So was her dad walking her down?
Yeah. So her dad's was the officiant because he's a pastor. But he walked her down and then got up front to do the service itself or whatever. So
when she got on her knees, was that at the altar?
It was like in front of the altar. She didn't actually get on the altar. It was more spontaneous. Okay. Yeah.
Did her fiance do it too?
You know what? I didn't look at him.
You were having your own little crisis.
I was having my own little crisis, and I only had eyes for her.
Okay, but I can see where it's just like, okay, this is weird, but then it would just be it. But it had the emptiness. It felt empty.
It was
to you.
so empty. It was
Okay.
It was the most empty I think I've ever felt in my entire life.
Did that make you feel relief? Shock?
I was in shock. I was definitely in shock. I stayed in shock for about a month, actually.
Yeah.
I had to drive back from Chicago after the wedding,
Yeah.
Which was a 6-hour drive in
By
my car
yourself.
by myself.
Realizing there's no God.
Yeah, the whole way home, that's basically all I did was say, there's no God. Holy fuck, there's no God.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
And that was like the whole 6-hour drive home.
Oh, my God.
And I stopped at that Christian gas station on the way home, and it was playing "Mercy Me."
Oh, no.
You know the one I'm talking about?
Maybe.
In Iowa. Anyway, so yeah, it was a long drive home.
So, at what point, if I can shift the topic, at
Yeah.
what point did your mom pass away?
So my mom passed away when I was 22. And she and I were the
And
only
the wedding was when?
26.
Oh.
So my mom died long before the wedding.
Before you deconverted?
Yeah.
Okay.
But my mom passed away when I was 22. And she and I were the only Christians. You know, my brother had become non-Christian when he was about 18. My dad no longer did any of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's just me and my mom. You know, her family is still Jewish. And when she died, then I was the only Christian.
Can I ask how she died?
She died from heart disease.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a big blow to me for many reasons. Obviously, she was my mother.
Yeah.
And that was very sad. And also just that then I was alone with my faith.
Yeah.
And I had no one to shore me up.
Yeah.
Really. Like I had Elle.
She's
on
in
the phone
Chicago.
In Chicago.
Yeah.
But other than that, I didn't really have anybody.
Yeah.
So and I think that made a big difference because like I wasn't going to church. I didn't want to go to church.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do any of those things. You know, I still prayed a lot. I still, but it was.
So can I ask, so 4 years later, when you realize there's no God, how does that knowledge then affect how you reflect on your mom and her passing and whether you'll see her again and what might she think of the journey that you're on?
Yeah. So I always say my mother would be absolutely horrified by the person I am now.
Yeah.
But like she'd mean well, but she'd be horrified.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I think the hardest thing for me one of the hardest things for me about losing my faith was that I lost my belief in an afterlife.
Yeah.
And that had given me a lot of comfort that like my mother was dead, but I would see her again and we would have eternity together. It wasn't the end, So I think part of the reason I mourned so hard when I realized that it was all bullshit was because then I realized you'll never see her again.
Yeah.
The only place that you have your mother now is in your memories.
Yeah.
And
so it's like she died all over again.
So she died all over again. And I reacted like she died all over again.
Yeah.
It was extremely painful. And I mean, I think the month after I deconverted, I don't think I got out of bed. It was before I had friends.
Mm-hmm. Me and the other
like
one.
Marie,
yeah.
who would be like, "Hey, are you alive?" And so I was all by myself, and I just laid in bed and cried a lot and tried to get used to not praying.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucked. It was terrible.
Yeah, there are those moments where things are going wrong, or I've lost my wallet, or some of the reasons that we ever prayed. And when those things happen, it's just almost impulse and just the habit to just jump, just call on God. And or just, I prayed, because the Bible says pray without ceasing.
Mm-hmm.
And I prayed throughout the day, all day long. I'd pray in tongues under my breath. I would, out of the blue, my family and even my close friends would laugh because all throughout the day, just out of the blue for no reason in the strangest, timing, I'd just say, Holy Spirit. And it was just a habit to just say Holy Spirit, just because I was one of those guys, and I'd gotten in a group of other guys that were just, we'd gotten kind of gone all the way from like macho Christianity with the Wild at Heart book and everything to where we were embracing the fact that we were the bride of Christ. And so, the Holy Spirit was my lover.
That's super gay.
And
Like,
Jesus
literally.
was my
I
lover,
approve.
right? And so I was gay with Jesus, and and so this just intimacy all day long. So anyway, point being is that that's ingrained. Those are habits, and
For sure.
part of once there was no one home to talk to.
You end up talking to yourself a lot.
Amen. Thank you, sister.
Uh-huh.
God damn. I thought I was the only one that did that.
I think it's a perfectly good coping mechanism. There's nothing wrong with
I do
talking to
too.
yourself.
Well, that's what we were doing all
Right.
along anyway.
Exactly.
That's true.
We're just continuing the tradition.
That's true.
It's just not in third person anymore.
Well, and the thing is one of the reasons why we kept doing it is it seemed to work because it did comfort us, and maybe
Right.
sometimes we did find our wallet. I don't know, but the it's a placebo, and so the fact that it still works and still makes us feel better, so what?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the placebo effect, okay? If it works,
Mhm.
it's not dumb.
If it works, it's not placebo, right?
Well, no, it's still placebo, but it works.
Yeah, it's still placebo.
So you said, so your mom died when you were 22, 26, you deconvert. At what point did you decide to seek out a non-believing community for support?
So during my deconversion, I was not doing well. I did see a therapist. I was seeing one before that, so it wasn't because of the deconversion. I just so happened to be seeing a therapist. And she could obviously tell I was not doing well. She just hit Google and was like, is there anything for former Christians out there? And that's when I found the former fundamentalist support group and met some really cool people, and life started getting better. Sorry.
But how has having other former fundamentalists in your life impacted how you've been able to kind of like heal from what you've gone through, or what has that meant for you?
I think blasphemy is really healing. And nobody enjoys blasphemy like other former fundies. Because it's not really blasphemous, but we enjoy the trappings of blasphemy. And it's really satisfying. It's like the big fuck you to the idea of God, basically. And having other people who really understand what it's like to be so damaged by the church and by the teachings and the doctrines, who can sympathize with that. And I mean, sometimes you just have to tell stupid Jesus stories. Christians don't like those.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah, they can't handle that.
Or never believers.
Well, and this is what I'm thinking about when you say blasphemy, because you're already, and I'll just call it whiplash as far as like one of the ways that we feel when we lose our faith is it's like you're just swung the other direction so fast and furious that you got a stiff neck.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, blasphemy just says, I'm going to whiplash myself on purpose because, and I know this about myself, I loved Jesus with all my heart. Fucking loved him.
Yeah.
It was deep and it was real and it was passionate.
Yeah.
And I the first time that I saw the book cover of Christopher Hitchens' book, God Is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything, I was offended. You're talking about my buddy, and he died on a cross for you, Christopher Hitchens. And this is the thanks. You're flipping the bird to the guy who died for you. You have no idea, how, tragic it is. It's blasphemy, that he's doing.
Right.
And so to come out on the other side, I mean, even on our private Facebook site, and of course, everybody's on the spectrum as far as where they're at, and even in their relationship, or at least their feelings toward Jesus. They could hate Jehovah and still kind of have feelings for Jesus, maybe not as Lord and Savior, but just as a wise teacher or something. And sometimes people get on there and they're like, fuck Jesus. And then, or they'll show like, I don't know, some pretty blasphemous stuff. And it's, I don't care about it. I don't get worked up about either one, but I personally haven't And maybe it's just because I haven't had the courage to do it. Maybe it would be healing for me to do it, but I've never actually just gone the full other end, done some, because what we're saying is there is no Jesus, there is no God. And so we can, put the crucifix in piss and you shouldn't feel anything because it's literally just a piece of wood sitting in piss. It's like, it's not true. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense because it's hard to know who to be angry with.
Yeah.
Where to direct your anger. And if you're a reasonable person and a kind and understanding and gray, nuanced type of person, you don't want to go to the other end and just be like volatile and like violent against the whole idea. You want to pretend like that you can be rational and reasonable about it. And maybe that's what stops you, Cass. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
So Emily, what does that look like when you do blasphemy?
I think it's a casual sort of blasphemy. I'm not making like art projects of urine-soaked crosses or anything of that. I mean, that's so cliche anyway. It's already been done.
Everyone's putting urine on everything. It's so done.
Yeah.
Piss Christ is what they call it.
But I just like the casual blasphemy. When I was a Christian, I never swore by saying Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
It's my favorite now.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to swear. I use them all, but Jesus fucking Christ, are you kidding me?
Yeah, right.
And I find that very enjoyable. When people get all preachy, there's a lot of preachiness at work from my Christian coworkers, for example, and just sort of like subtly undermining or like subtly making it clear that I think they're ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're invading my space with their Jesus talk, so I can invade their space with my
blasphemy.
With my blasphemy.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't start it, I don't throw blasphemy out there.
Yeah.
For no reason. I don't start the blasphemy. But if they start the Jesus
they
talk,
drew first
then
blood.
Right,
Yep.
exactly.
Well, and by that definition, I also blasphemize because I say Jesus Christ all the time. In fact, I was talking to a Christian friend the other day, and we go way back, and he's, we're kind of estranged, and so it's already an awkward encounter. And he's telling me about this thing where God did something amazing. And as soon as he kind of said that, like, it involved money, and like some friends of ours, they started a business, and in the first year, they grossed $1 million in sales, and I went, Jesus Christ. And I mean, it was authentic. I wasn't trying to offend him. It's just how I responded. And he's such a go with the flow type guy, but it's more of a defense mechanism. He just went, he goes, exactly. Like he tried to concur.
And then your eyes rolled out of your head.
Yeah, because I didn't, that was, that could be he's actually inferring that, it was Jesus Christ that made the $1 million. I don't know.
Yeah.
Jesus is actually really good at marketing.
So I've got one story about Emily, and then we should wrap it up and talk about some casual things. Shit. So I wanted to tell one story about Emily where you're super fucking awesome and have influenced me in a very positive way.
Ooh.
So you're probably going to laugh that this is a remarkable story that I keep in my head. But I was a Zumba instructor for several years, and I was going in to renew my quote-unquote license, which meant I had to be at an 8-hour class on a Saturday learning how to do Zumba, which is a dance aerobic class with Latin moves. And I didn't want to do it. I didn't fucking want to be there all day. I already knew how to fucking teach Zumba. I shouldn't have to spend my whole day here, but you're required to do it every year, and you pay $200 to get this license renewed. And I went in there and I signed up, and then I went and sat in the car and debated whether I should just drive away and leave because they would never notice. They would never notice if I wasn't there. I already signed in, and I was freaking out. And I called Emily. I'm like, Emily, I'm having an ethical dilemma. I don't want to go. I don't want to go to this thing. And you were like, sounds like you're feeling guilty. I would advise you to keep your guilt for kicking puppies. And I was like, what? You're like, if you're going to feel guilty about something, feel guilty about kicking puppies, not for skipping out on this Zumba class. And like,
that's the threshold.
Yeah. I was like, and it's like, those words you said have been slowly sinking into my head for like literally years.
Yes.
Because it really is what it comes down to me for me is the idea of ethics. Who am I harming?
Yeah.
I'm not harming anyone. I already know how to do my job. I already paid them the goddamn fee. I don't need to stay there. However, are you hurting vulnerable, innocent little creatures and kicking them?
Nah.
Don't do that. Ethics is a rational thing. It's not just a book of made up rules that are irrelevant and just arbitrary and just picking some random thing that has no real consequences just because that's the bad thing. Anyway, point being, your ethics, your very short ethics lesson impacted me quite a bit.
Well, good.
Yeah, I liked that. Was a good day. And then
I'm glad.
I drove away and I didn't do the class.
Good.
And I went home and kicked puppies instead.
Not so good.
Yeah.
So anyway, Cass, do you have something else you want to say? Otherwise, I was going to say that maybe you should lead the casual questions since I already know Emily pretty well.
Yeah. I will.
Okay.
So, Emily, do you find yourself being an oracle in other people's lives besides Marie?
I mean, not on purpose, but I think I have my moments. They're usually accidental.
Sure.
But maybe they're better for that, because if you think about things too much, it just makes you stupid. So, sometimes a little off the cuff folk wisdom is a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. In this whole process, did you get counseling?
Oh God, so much counseling. Yeah.
Well, see, that's what makes you an oracle. And you have a psych degree.
I do have a psych degree, so that is also helpful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of kicking puppies, you may have already mentioned this, but do you have any pets?
I do. I have a pet rabbit. I spoil him so much. He is my baby, and he's a huge troublemaker.
His name is Puck.
His name is Puck.
P as in
like hockey
Peter.
puck.
Puck. Yeah.
Is he in a cage or does he run free?
Well, so he used to run free, but at my old apartment, he dug through the floor to China.
Don't know if you heard of it.
Yeah, and there was literally floorboards. You could see the floorboards, and it was horrible. And my landlady thought so too. And I owed them a lot of money. So now he's caged when I'm not home.
What's the status of your love life?
My love life is non-existent. I am too busy to have a love life. I work.
Interruption. You are very loved.
I am loved, but I don't have a love life. That is a separate thing. Yeah. So no love life, but I'm okay. I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
So of all the places in the world that you could go, where would you visit?
Oh goodness. So I like routine. I've already been to Paris, and it was lovely. And I also speak a little French. So I think I would like to go back to Paris, even though it's cold and rainy, but it's just a lovely place.
Well, and it's kind of burning right now at the time of this taping. It's there's riots, and Macron might be asked to resign. It's just upheaval over there.
I mean, I think the last time I went over there was riots too, actually.
Yeah.
But it's still a great place.
Yeah.
I've been there once, but I was a senior in high school, so not much memory of it. Or did I have the capacity to understand like the beauty or the value of the culture?
It's a very different system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, what's one of the last songs that played on your playlist?
The last song that played on my playlist,
or just one that the music you listen to.
I mean, so right now I'm really into the soundtrack from Hamilton.
Okay.
And I just love Lin-Manuel Miranda, so basically anything that he wrote, I'm into.
Have you seen the play?
I have not, because that's expensive.
Yeah.
I've seen a bootleg. Does that count? Oops. It was on YouTube. I feel like that's fine.
Yeah.
I didn't hunt it down. And then I've been into Halsey, which that's been, I like music a lot, but I listen to mostly musicals because, well, theater nerd.
Yeah.
Ooh, also, one last question. How do you decorate for Christmas?
How do I decorate for Christmas? Well, so the Jewish part of me I'm not a big Christmas fan. I never have been. Even as a Christian, I didn't really like Christmas all that much. Mm-hmm. But my mom really liked Christmas. so I decorate for her, like in her memory. But I hate Christmas. I'm a Grinch. So I bought a pitch black Christmas tree because I thought, okay, that's, that seems to fit my aesthetic.
Yeah.
And then I decorate it with all kinds of random crap. There's like a rubber chicken on there. I have a menorah, like a tiny menorah on there for the Jewish part. I have just all kinds of random crap.
I love it.
Yeah. I tried to hang it from the ceiling to be like the anti-Christmas tree, but it turns out that's really hard to do in an apartment.
Yeah.
So
Someday.
Upside down or right side up?
Upside down.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Takes more talent than I have.
So how you feel? You get to say everything you wanted to say? Do you want to reconvert back to Christianity after second guessing yourself? Or
No. I'm really happy being an atheist. I enjoy my life that is free of dogma and superstition and guilt and shame.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the freedom that comes with looking at things as they are and just accepting what is, whether you like it or not.
Would you say that you say yes to what is?
What the fuck does that mean?
Hey,
She doesn't listen to the show, Cass.
Sorry, dude. Do you want me to redo that?
No,
Say,
you just said it.
no. Yeah.
You accept what is. It's the same thing.
We have a saying, say yes to what is, which is essentially what you're saying. It's
Okay.
just, it's accepting the world on the world's terms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I say yes to what is.
Yeah, there it is. We got our soundbite. Boom!
Yeah.
Yay.
Well, thanks for sharing your story. I know it took a lot of courage.
Thank you for having me. I had a good time. Like, this was nice.
So your friend Emily, and boy, I enjoyed that.
Yeah. She's
Sharp.
good people. Yeah.
I'm going to speculate that she does crossword puzzles.
I don't know if she does.
I should have asked her because she's got a great vocabulary.
I'll ask her if she does.
It's not relevant, but
It's so relevant. It matters.
yeah, I just I don't know. Yeah, for example, she used the word immediate when she was talking about her childhood exposure to the concept of hell.
Mm.
She said it was just immediate, and what she's meaning there, or it's one of the most underused meanings or versions of immediate, and that is that it's being shown something without reasoning. So it's without a mediator. It just goes right from the information, and it bypasses your reasoning and your skepticism or critical thinking, and it just becomes, you adopt it right away. It's just immediate, and
Yeah.
that's true of children. I mean, they're concrete thinkers, and so if authoritative figure or person in their life says there's this thing called hell, it's eternal damnation after you die, then it just is lodged in there. And so
Yeah.
I just thought that was a great use of the word immediate. I'm just
Yeah.
a wordsmith. Okay, that was kind of nerdy, but I'm good.
No, that's legit.
Yeah. Also, there's something that is going on in me that I am really wanting to do, but it's going to take a lot of not only just bravery, but maybe discernment as to when it's appropriate and when it's not. And that is this. In my mind, the concept of a interventionary or anthropomorphic God that's engaged in the affairs of humanity is deeply, deeply evil and offensive. Very few people could ever even see it that way. In fact, they see it as a great thing that God is involved in the earth. And the reason that it's evil and mean and like, I want to say fighting words. Like, so if I'm with a guy, guy and his family, and I say, that fucking movie was awesome,
Yeah.
and he would pull me aside and he said, we don't use that kind of talk in front of my kids. That's the way I want to treat this, except even more severe. If somebody starts talking about how God was good, how God did this, God intervened in my life and healed me of this, or he gave me an idea to start a business and it was successful. And so just any way where a person is they would call it testifying, but I would say boasting of somehow God has intervened in their life. And I just want to pull them aside and say, we don't use that kind of language. I mean, I want to stop this because, and Emily's testimony is evidence as to why. It fucked her up to believe in an interventionary God. She went to Benny Hinn. She had the faith. She stopped her insulin shot that one day, and then she just kept going to faith healers. She just kept going. And eventually it's just mean. It's emotional abuse.
Yeah.
And then there's that. And then there's like the fact that a tornado comes through town and somebody says, oh, God spared my house. Well, he didn't spare everybody else's. And so it's just evil to espouse or purport a interventionary God because of how many people you're leaving out, which is the majority.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you had a coincidence that feels like God is just that, a coincidence. And the odds are slim. That's why you've credited it to God. So it happens very rarely, which means 99% of the time we live in a world, at least from a believer's perspective, that's godless. And sometimes we really needed him to show up.
Yeah.
Anyway, she just brought that up for me, and it stirs up for me. And going back to that, I referred to that talk with the Christian where he said something like this woman started a business, and in the first year they grossed $1 million. And I went, Jesus Christ, And I was trying to honor, by sounding shocked, like, oh, that's a great story,
right.
Kind of implied. But I should have said, stop. We don't talk like that. Or something to where I don't want to hear that. Yeah. That's evil. Yeah. And I don't care if he's stunned in his tracks, which he would be. How is that evil? God gave this woman a business that netted $1 million. Yeah, that's evil. How so? Well, maybe that would start a conversation. I don't know.
Right. Ultimately, they get to say whatever the hell they want to say.
Sure.
There's no kids around. But yeah. No,
you're right. I'm not talking about censoring them. I guess I am, maybe. But I am just saying, please don't talk. Please don't tell me that story anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would phrase it. Maybe that's why I haven't done it yet, because I don't know how.
Yeah, that's a complicated conversation to have, because I don't know if I've had a conversation like that before, but I do remember one time when I used a phrase the wrong way. Like I was, that joke where you like complaining about something and then it kind of dawns on you that's not a very big like issue to have, and then you go hashtag first world problems.
Yeah.
Like I tried to do that one time in regards to something, and I like mixed it up and I said white people problems, and I think I was with my sister-in-law at the time, and she like called me out like unapologetically exactly how you're talking about it. Like,
I know that. Yeah. So even like, what we're talking about in the Me Too movement and like, what can men do? Well, part of it is that when you're with a guy who's talking about grabbing him by the pussy or whatever, then we step in and say, we need training on this, because I'm already stumped as to how to phrase it.
Right. What do you do? What do you say?
Yeah. Cause you're not their dad. You can't tell them to stop it. My last talk I did on the air with Ryan Bell, he did something. I need to go back and listen to it, because he actually kind of role played that, and it was really sharp. How did he do it? Anyway, but that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Just like they wouldn't make a racist joke or a misogynistic joke, and we'd call them out. Ideally, this is a very similar thing, because it's evil to talk. To talk derogatorily about, anybody, I guess, behind their back. But I think this is evil when people start boasting about how God intervened in their life. I just want to say something, and maybe that's what. Here's the first time I've ever done this on the air. If you have an idea as to how to stop people from talking in a way that is both respectful, mature, peer to peer.
Yeah.
And yet, you got to address it. You got to call them out. How do you do that? So if you know how to do that, email us at everyone'sagnostic@gmail.com.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be very curious how to do it. I mean, I think it has to probably depend on who you're talking to at a given point and what your relationship is like with them. Like,
okay. Yeah.
I imagine there's people that you could be pretty candid to, but just think about what how we're always like, yes and like if someone's getting all excited and talking about how Jesus is doing stuff in their life and they're expecting you to get all excited along with them, and you're like, no, like, and then you just start disagreeing with them and try to change their trajectory. Like, you have to be pretty, I don't know, comfortable.
Well, so are you saying say yes to them? So when this guy was boasting about this interventionary God, I'd say, yes, and lots of people have prayed for their business to thrive and it didn't.
Yeah, that might be a more delicate way to come into it and be like, I hear you celebrating that God has been really good to you and I am really happy for your success. But you know what? Something is sticking out to me about this that's kind of bothering me. Like, can we hash it out or really quick and make it more of a collaborative measure than trying to correct somebody, or because they're never going to react well with that kind of positioning and posturing.
Yeah. And that example that you just gave, my immediate reaction is I don't want to make that big a deal of it. I mean, or as far as I don't necessarily, well, you said the other day when we were talking that in all the times that you've debated or argued, even with your loved ones, about a platform or a stance on a political, religious, philosophical issue, you can't remember ever changing anyone's mind.
Right.
So that we can say is not necessarily the goal, but it would be the goal, but not the expectation.
Right.
The other thing that came to mind is I've had nonviolent communication training, and of course you've heard this many times in therapy, is to use I statements.
Yep.
And so maybe we could incorporate a way to respond with an I statement. And I think you just did.
Right.
I think that's great is one of the things you said. I think that's great for them. And I have known, or I myself have prayed for things many times to happen for my business or whatever, if you want to keep it topical. And nothing happened. And so I'm experiencing some confusion around when and if God does do these things.
Right.
Of course, that's not what I would say because I don't give a fuck. I'm an atheist.
Right. And you don't have to like debase yourself further than you want to, because that seems like even like the example you just gave just felt overly generous in itself, because it almost like you almost got onto their platform and said, I don't know so much about your platform. It doesn't feel good. Of course, you don't like it. You already know you don't like it. Like, you don't have to pander.
Yeah, it's not entirely honest.
Right. And we don't want to be dishonest, but like, I don't think it's unfair to just say, I'm really happy for you. I am. Is it okay if we have a quick discussion though about what it means to claim that God has given you something, given that there's people suffering right now all over the earth? And
okay, that is the best example I've heard yet. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm glad we have that on tape because I'm going to practice that.
Type it up, print it out, put it on your wall.
Yeah. So let's go back to wrap up on our summation or recap of our talk with Emily. What do you got any thoughts on? God, I mean,
I've known Emily for years now. And so part of me finds it difficult to just sit here.
Be objective.
And to reflect objectively. So I guess my reaction is just authentic as it is. But I think the most of what I feel right now, which is probably less relevant to listeners, is I'm just so proud of her.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about everything that she deals with in her day-to-day life. And I know she's comfortable with me talking about this, but she has, like she mentioned, diabetes. She also was diagnosed with celiac disease. a couple of years ago, which means like even
No
if
gluten.
like extremely no gluten, like you can't cook on the same dishes. Like if she just inhales a speck of gluten, she's going to be sick for days. And so she's balancing that out with her diabetes, as well as some other mental illnesses that I'm not sure she wants me to talk about or not, but she's got a ton on her plate, and she's working and she's studying, and she doesn't have her mom, and she lives alone, and she's just such a fucking amazing friend, and she has such a beautiful heart, and she's dealing with all of these challenges in her life and her deconversion and all that shit. And like, I know life's not easy for her. It really, really isn't. But I just admire her so much. And I'm just so privileged to have her as a close friend. And I mean, I think that's just where my emotions are sitting right now.
Well, if Arnold Schwarzenegger walked in my house, and I would just be, and especially, I would just be awestruck by his body, how strong he is. And that's, especially given what you've just unpacked, that's how I feel about her, because there are people that they have a lot going on. They're suffering. And everybody's going to play that differently. Somebody's going to play that as, like, listen to my story and look for pity.
Yeah.
Some people are going to ignore it and just try to put on a happy face. But my experience with her jolliness it's absolutely genuine.
Yeah.
Like she would be fun to hang out with.
She is, yeah.
How does she do that? How does she be that type of personality given all the obstacles and handicaps in her life?
I don't know.
Well, it's because she's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
She's such a badass, and it's so cool because I think she's got like some social anxiety. So whenever we have like a party and she comes over, she'll usually find like a chair in the corner and just kind of hunker down and just kind of like quietly observe for most of the time until just the right moment, and then she'll say some one-liner that's so relevant and just like profound compared to like what we're talking about, and we all just turn it and we're like, holy shit, Emily.
Yeah.
I love that you used the word oracle, because I hadn't used that word for her before, but I think that's absolutely true, and that is how I see her, because she's so insightful. Like, I love talking to her because she can just ground me and kind of distill me into my core, and she just has a skill for that. So she's just fucking amazing. I love Emily.
Well, and it might have been a challenge for her if she is like, she's probably a woman of few words. She lives alone. She's not used to talking for an hour and a half with people.
Yeah.
And where she's the center of attention. So I can see where, because everybody on this show kind of gets off to a slow start.
Yeah.
They're nervous that the tape is rolling. They're nervous that it's going to be on the internet, and it's never going to go away until the electricity grid goes down. And, but boy, just powerful story. And, like I said, I'm a wordsmith and I'm a crossword guy, and she used probably a dozen words that are not in your typical American, daily vocabulary, lexicon.
Yeah.
And every time somebody does that, I get a little ooh, I get a little bit, it's like jazz. It's like when if somebody's doing a solo and they do some lick that is like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's what it's like for me.
That's awesome.
Because conversation is jazz.
Yeah.
By the way. Don't know if you knew that. But
I could see that. Yeah.
We're improvising.
Yeah.
And we're playing off each other.
Yeah.
Just like they do in trading fours in a jazz situation. Anyway. Well, thanks for doing this. I really enjoy. This is probably what, I don't know, by the time it comes out, this might be our third or fourth, fifth time that you've co-hosted.
Yeah.
And I think you're doing fantastic. And I don't mean to even, patronize you, but it's good. I
like your words of affirmation. I receive them and enjoy them without shame. I especially liked your email yesterday where I sent you something and you were like, son of a bitch, that's fantastic. Never leave me. And I was like, yep, this is the perfect job.
Yeah. Never leave me.
Never leave me.
It was, you're very impressive, and I just can't, I'm very excited about your engagement and your joining of this program.
Well, I'm just super fucking happy to be here. They always say that you can tell if a relationship is going to last if both of the people in the relationship think that they're the lucky one.
That's why I love that definition.
Right?
I say that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know if it's always 100% true, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah. All right, well, have a good weekend.
All right.
Oh, daughter, I once thought that I had angels in my room. They were sleeping on my fan while I was dreaming of you. And daughter, I once had such desire to believe that our lives had been planned out by an unseen deity. But you don't have to waste your time holding on to beautiful lies. Daughter, I once knew that everything that I believed, it was good and fair and true and consistent with my needs. But daughter, I am wrong almost as often as I'm right. So daughter, just be strong enough to make up your own mind, 'cause you don't have to waste your time